Welcome to Popcorn Planet. I am Andy Signore, and it's President's Day. Happy President's Day to everybody except for Steph, who doesn't live here and doesn't celebrate President's Day. Still so happy to have you, Steph, as we talk about an Alec Baldwin update. That's pretty massive, guys. We didn't get a live today, but I did want to get something out on this holiday, and I want to talk about this because this could have huge ramifications, and I think thanks to Steph's friend who put together some videos that we're going to go through, some actual tests, this could be the out for Mr. Alec Baldwin, it seems. So I want to present what's going on here. I also spoke to Christopher Melcher. I'm going to give you his quotes, but this is a big deal. So let's go through this, and I want to get your thoughts as we explain these clips, Steph. Basically, the DA, the district attorney, did some informal experiments that could corroborate what Alec Baldwin claims, that he didn't pull the trigger. This comes from a Vanity Fair article, which I do implore you guys read. It's a big, long update that was out, I think, a couple days, Friday, this dropped Friday evening, that goes through all the details of the case in a pretty good way. But there's a very telling part here at the end where the DA admits that they did some tests. One of the investigators in my office happens to be a very old type revolver, so we brought it in at my request so we could look at it and see if that was all possible. Talking about Alec's, what he said about he didn't pull the trigger. They cleared a room in the office, and two investigators inspected it, and then the one who had supplied it. Then a second officer who verified that it was empty. Then they visually showed me, said the DA, you can pull the hammer back without actually pulling the trigger and without actually locking it. So you pull it back part way, it doesn't lock, and if you let go, the firing pin can hit the primer of the bullet, and that can cause a live round of ammunition to fire. So the first test we did here, Steph, because when we saw this, we wanted to play it out, and it's a crucial. The reason we're talking about this is because, as Christopher Melcher told me in his own words, this is reasonable doubt. The fact that the DA is saying this out loud and presenting this ahead of time, this is what's going to, in theory, be why he's not charged. Because you got to remember, she's got to try this case. So DA has the gun in evidence and needs to test every scenario to see if the gun will discharge without activating the trigger. They may have gotten to fire by partially cocking the hammer and letting it drop. I thought that gun expert Steve Wolf that we saw from that CNN clip debunked that. But they might have gotten it to fire partially by cocking the hammer, letting it drop. I have with the same model gun. Maybe this one was modified. Even if the story is correct, the first AD and the armorer could still be charged for not checking live rounds. Alec could avoid prosecution because the first AD yelled cold gun. The DA isn't supposed to bring charges unless there's good faith belief that they can secure a conviction. So she may not feel safe, and this may be why. So, Steph, we're going to watch this. This is the first video we have here where your friend has a similar piece. Let's call it a piece so we don't keep saying the wrong word over again.
Yes.
Piece from that era, and as pulling it back, you couldn't pull it back in this first test all the way without the chamber sort of rotating, and even at a half cock, you couldn't hit a primer because the chamber rotates. See, guys, you can just see here it's not a chamber there. You wouldn't knock it through. So there's no version of this where you could sort of pull it back half or full that would hit the primer and therefore have it fire, is what we learned from your test. However, then you did a second test, right? You put a blank in the second test here.
So there's a percussion cap on.
And so when you pull it back just slightly,
the hammer's not falling with the pressure needed to make the cap go off.
So you're pushing that. He's not pulling back with a full weight, but he's pushing back as much as he can until it locks.
Just to show that it is alive.
And he's going to show you now at the last shot here that this wasn't, in fact, a blank at full cock and a charge. It is. You can see there that was a real blank that was in there. So, yeah, go ahead, Steph. Explain more further. Basically, this is showing that if the primer was sensitive, if there was a very sensitive primer based on the bullet, this could be an out. Alec Baldwin's able to say, like, well, I pulled it sort of back,
with the pressure
and
needed.
technically, yes, on a delicate primer, it could have made a charge. Correct?
Correct. So if you just stop that video for a moment and open up, I believe you've got that picture that I'd sent you.
Yep.
There we go. So for those that aren't in the know, in regards to let's say a projectile for this particular piece, let's put it that way, you've got, and you can see the primer right at the bottom, you've got the case with the powder in it, and then you've got the actual projectile that then leaves the piece, the barrel, and then the piece, right? Now, if you go back onto that second video where my friend is pulling it back, now, this is all very, very dependent on the type of ammunition that was used and the primer. What do I mean by that? So, if the primer was highly, highly sensitive, then the hammer would only have to go back only a little bit, like my friend is showing here, for it then to hit the primer, that then creates a spark, that then ignites the powder within the case, that then propels the projectile through the barrel out of the piece. If the primer was not sensitive, then the hammer would have to go all the way back to create enough force for the trigger to be pulled, the hammer to hit the primer with enough force to ignite the spark, to then ignite the gunpowder to propel the projectile out of the barrel and out of the piece. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it makes total sense. So, I mean, look, the reality here is this is a potential out for Alec.
Yes.
At the same time, this is something they can test with the very firearm, and just so you guys are aware, they are. We're waiting, and the reason we've been waiting so long is, as this Vanity Fair article reveals, the DA is waiting for a full definitive FBI breakdown on the weapons, how it was used, etc., that they expect to get by the end of this month. It's a very in-depth piece that goes through a lot of the details more of how this happened. But she has sent out that, and they're doing a million tests, and she's hoping that the FBI and their sort of, the ways they do the check, they'll be able to see where it came from, who handled it. There's a lot of intel they can get from the projectile, everything else, the weapon itself, how it was done. Was it modified? Would that test we just showed you work? And it seems like, Steph, it's like, yeah, there's an out here in theory. And it's interesting because we're hearing the DA basically give Alec Baldwin an out, because now clearly that's what his lawyer is going to argue, right? Yeah, no, see, we told you. And even she said it could be. But the reality is we'll know with the piece itself and the actual ammo, because they have it all. They'll know if that primer was, delicate or not in the testing. So what's interesting about this is, look, some are going to say this DA putting this out there is not actually correct. Like this is a political maneuver she's doing. I've spoke to some people as well who, when they saw this headline and saw it about, it's like, you don't put this out early unless you're trying to give yourself an out or trying to give Alec an out. I don't know. It seems like, yes, we've proven there is something here that could give him a way to justify why he pulled it. And he was told it was cold, whatever, and therefore the blame will fall to the others in theory. But this gives probable cause, and so reasonable doubt rather that this wasn't that they're not going to secure this. It's reasonable doubt he's not going to get this conviction, is what Christopher even said as he saw this. So it's very telling. Now, Steph, it does seem like if they have the right weapon and the primer and everything, they should be able to do this test, and the FBI should be able to deduce whether this is true or not. Correct?
Very easily. Very, very easily. Just get the same primer, the same ammunition that was used in the incident, and all you've got to do is do exactly what my friend is just showing you in the video that we provided to Andy. Just pulling it back ever so slightly, the hammer, because when you pull it back ever so slightly with the hammer, as soon as that hammer hits that primer, if that's then enough for the primer to spark and then ignite the powder in the case, which then propels the propellant out of the barrel and out of the firearm, then that's proof that Alec is telling the truth. He never pushed the trigger in the first place. He only pulled back the hammer only a little way, let it go, and all of a sudden it went off, because in that scenario, the ammunition that was used was with a primer that was highly, highly, highly sensitive. However, cannot always disprove that, because if it doesn't completely fire as you just pull it back ever so slightly, But it does if you pull the hammer back all the way and then you've got to pull the trigger. Then that completely blows Alec Baldwin's argument out of the door that he then says, I never pulled the trigger. That then, completely destroys his story at that point.
Yeah, and I was going to say...
easy to test out to see if he's telling the truth or not, absolutely.
I mean, either way, it just still feels like he wasn't doing proper gun safety at all. Like, he wasn't following the protocols. He should have checked it. For me, it doesn't really change it per se, but from a legal perspective, it seemed like it does. And if this proves true, if this is the thing that sort of did it, this could be the reason that Alec is not charged and why we don't know. And now, if it's not, if they do that test and if it doesn't pass that test, he's still going to be in trouble. So we'll see. It's just interesting that she put this out there early. You know what I mean? It's interesting she's putting this piece out when they've been sort of not telling us much at all. That she is revealing, we did a test, and it does show that Alec might be telling the truth. I don't know why put that out until you're ready to do your charges and actually present it all at the same time. Some are going to say it's political. What do you guys think in the comments down below? I want to hear your thoughts. Steph, thank you and your friend for putting that together. That was awesome. Make sure you go subscribe to Steph the Alternate here on YouTube. You can hit the subscribe button to her as well as me. And in both cases, make sure you hit the bell for all alerts. Smash the like button, that little thumbs up, and leave your comments. What do you think? Does this change your opinion? Could this be a way for him to get out? Could it change your mind on things? Or have you believed him all along? Let us know your comments down below. We will be back live tomorrow as long with other content here on Popcorn Planet. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching, everybody.